Thank you very much, Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Department of, I'm forgetting the new name of this department, but Department of Communication and Department of Information Technology, that's Shri Satyanarayan Ji.
Its name is DT, sir. No, it's called
DT, actually. So, it has been deified, I understand that. Distinguished panelists on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to be here this afternoon and to share some of the views on the security related to ICT. I'm no expert of ICT, so I'll not be able to tell you about the technology. And similarly, I'm no expert of defense also, so I'll not be able to tell you what we are doing in defense to make this country secure. But I can only tell you that you are absolutely in secure hand, 100% secure. There may be some skirmishes here and there, some kind of naughtiness on the part of our volatile neighbor, but rest assured, all of you and each one of you are in safe hand, and this country is 100% secure. Having said that, let me now come to the main topic of ICT. As you know, that ICT is an extremely powerful tool. While it can be used for the betterment of the society, on the other hand, lot of people are trying to make use of ICT to make our lives a little more miserable. And that's a constant struggle between these two sides. And when we say that ICT is meant for the betterment of the society, what does it mean? It means basically to bring in more happiness, peace, and prosperity to the citizen of this country. And that can be brought in, to my mind, by focusing on 3-4 factors. The first and the foremost is the security of an individual and security of the nation. When we talk about the security of the nation, that means the external security. And when we talk about the security of individual and security of the property of an individual, that's basically the internal security. And we can make use of ICT in a very big way to ensure that each and every person is secured and the territorial integrity of the country is maintained. Second area where we can make use of ICT for the betterment of the society is food and shelter. And again, this means to create more and more employment opportunities, because unless you create employment opportunities, we will not be able to create a mechanism which is sustainable mechanism for ensuring food and shelter for each and every citizen of the country. And the third, and again a very important facet, is self-respect and life with dignity. And that means we got to create an environment which is based on equality and freedom, and that means we got to empower every citizen of this country, and that can be brought in by providing, by imparting good quality education to each and every student of this country, and secondly, by giving them access to institutional finance so that a lot of people, a lot of young, bright boys and girls, they can start their own enterprises, and that will result in a lot of employment opportunities. And finally, the health services. Now let me come to the ICT for security, because I'll be confining my discussion on ICT for security. Now when we talk about the ICT for security, we have to ensure that this animal is 100% peaceful, secured, resilient, and open environment. And when we talk about the security, that means that again two parts. One is preventive and second is punitive. And when we talk about the preventive, that means basically the surveillance of persons and the places, as the Principal Secretary IIT Maharashtra has said, that with the use of ICT in the surveillance area, we can make this country much more secure and peaceful. In the recent months, you must have seen, you must have read in newspaper, there are a lot of hue and cry, especially in respect of crimes against women. And had we installed some gadgets in buses, at our chaurahas, at other vantage points, we surely could have nabbed those culprits well in time, and we could have prevented that crime to occur. Secondly is regarding places. When we talk about the places, again, along the boundary also, but the entire boundary, as you know, that India has got a very perforated international border, and in many places, even the border is not very well defined. And that requires huge effort, and I must tell you that we are using the latest gadgets, the latest technology to keep each and every inch of our border under constant surveillance. Coming to the punitive side, first in that area is preparedness. Again, you must have read in newspaper, and the former chief of army, he raised this issue that Indian army is not very well prepared to take care of our volatile neighbors. But facts are a little otherwise. We are fully prepared, but for the preparation, we got to infuse technology in a big way. I give only a very small example. Like battlefield information system is a huge, huge, big project. That means, as you must have read in Mahabharata, when the Mahabharata was being fought, all old guys and Veda Vyas was able to write on the basis of the exact information on what was happening at the battlefield. Similar kind of a situation or similar kind of a mechanism is now being created for the Indian Army as well, another system called Battlefield Information System, so that the entire information on the real-time basis would be captured, would be available to all those who are required to know about that information. So that a person sitting in Delhi would know exactly what is happening at the border, at the Chinese border, at Pakistan border, and he or she will be able to guide and to pass commands to the concerned person, to the concerned even the tank. What is to be done, where to move, whom to target, and what is to be done. And now in the complex situation where integration is required, earlier Indian Army was taking one position, the Air Force was taking another position, but today we have to go in for an integrated kind of a system, and the Indian Army and the Air Force and other wings of the armed forces, they have to work in tandem, and that requires a lot of decision making, a lot of command and control decisions on a real-time basis. And many of these decisions cannot be taken by the guys who are on the field. And that is now we are trying to achieve as a huge, huge project. In addition to that, we require introduction and infusion of technology in arms and ammunition, in infrastructure, capacity building and training, again a huge area. And finally, the communication and awareness. We got to make people aware, we got to keep our Jawans informed what is being done, what is not being done, what is happening, what is not happening. And now let me come to the specifics of the security issues. When we talk about the security of ICT, that means security of information, security of infrastructure, security of networks, security of applications. And when I talk about infrastructure, that means basically the data centers as well. Now, to take care of the security of ICT, the first and the foremost concern is the legal framework. Though we have created enough provision within our Act, IT Act, however, at the international level, still a lot of work has to be done under the legal framework. I just give you a small example. Many of the critical information is being stored in India, though it belongs to, say, US or to some other country in Europe. Now, when it is being stored in India, what kind of laws are applicable? Whether the law of US is applicable on this, or whether the law of India is applicable on this, and if there is a theft of that information, who will take punitive action against that act of theft? Whether we can allow US to take action, or we have to take action as per our law. Our laws may not be sufficient or may not give enough confidence to the government of, say, US or to the citizen of US. So we got to create an appropriate legal framework across the world, and it means basically two kinds of things. One is a mandatory provision, and the second is some kind of a code of conduct or how to behave in those particular situations. Second is administrative framework. I was talking to Dr. Gulshan Rai, who is taking care of the CERT-In, but we have got only one CERT-In. It's a huge and very complex country, and as you know, all the state governments are very, very powerful, states. Now, under these circumstances, it is very necessary to create a similar kind of organization in each and every state. We must have a certain kind of an organization in every state. Otherwise, today what is happening, most of the information is with the state governments, and state governments do not know anything about the security of ICT, security of the information, and even if it means funding state governments from the central government, we must create a mechanism so that we can fund such activities at the state government level. Then the strategies. We had to devise new and new strategies. As I said in the beginning, there is a constant struggle between these two sides. One side which is trying to make use of ICT for the betterment of the society, another side which is trying to take advantage of ICT to create problems for the society. For that we require strategies, and these strategies have to be dynamic in nature. And when we talk about the strategies, that means we have to sit together with academia, with industry, with private sector, with civil society, and collectively we have to evolve such strategies. And thereafter we have to take measures, that means the operational issues. Second part is the capacity building. As I said a little earlier, that we got to create CERT-In in the state government, but in addition to that, we got to create enough capacities across the country, and especially at the state government level. At the state government level, we do not have any resources who understand the security issues related to ICT. Last year I had gone to UP, and I was discussing about the security of cyber security and the ICT, and they did not have any idea what is being done and what should be done, what are the preventive measures. They are very rudimentary knowledge. I personally feel, and I would request Secretary DIT to create a framework under which we can build capacities at the state government level, especially in the area of cyber security. And now, sir, I'll just give some synopsis of an executive order which has been issued by the President of USA recently. And this was issued in February 12, 2013. And these are related to improving critical infrastructure and the cyber security. I'll give you the main features of this executive order. And these executive orders have been studied by the Government of India. We are also trying to take whatever we can take from these orders, though we had already taken some of the steps which have been mentioned in this executive order. And this executive order has been issued under the signature of President Obama. And before I come to the main feature, I'll just read the 2 lines from the preamble, which says, that the cyber threat to the critical infrastructure continues to increase and represent one of the most serious national security challenges. It is much more challenging today than an external, say, excursion from China or from Pakistan. It defines the policy of the US to enhance the security and resilience of the nation's critical infrastructure and to maintain a cyber environment that encourages efficiency, innovation, and economic prosperity while promoting safety, security, business confidentiality, privacy, and civil liberties. And now I come to the main feature of this executive order. First, it says this EO defines what is critical infrastructure as the system, etc., etc. I am not going into the definition. Second, it delineates the responsibilities between various government bodies like National Institute of Science and Technology, Department of Homeland Security, which is equivalent to our Ministry of Home Affairs, defense industrial bodies, and the private sector for improving critical infrastructure cyber security. And I would underline this word, private sector. When we talk about the cyber security, the role of the private sector is very, very important, and especially in respect of ICT. It calls for the information sharing and the policy coordination amongst all stakeholders to protect critical infrastructure. It also underlines the need for protection of privacy and civil liberty. I do not know, when I was in DIT at that point of time, I think DOPT was undertaking an exercise to enact a law on the privacy issues, because when we talk about the cyber security, it is possible to look into every aspect of an individual. That means we would be intruding into the privacy of an individual, and that is not acceptable in any civilized society. However, to take care of the security, there has to be some kind of a intrusion. So we have to strike a balance, and for that we got to have a policy framework and a legal framework so that each and every individual will feel safe. The next main feature of this policy is it envisages a consultative process to coordinate improvements to the cyber security of critical infrastructure. We cannot issue farmans from, say, Defense or from Ministry of Home Affairs or, say, from DIT. It has to be a consultative process, and when I say consultative process, that means we got to consult the civil society as well. And then it says, for this purpose, a cyber security framework would be evolved that provides cross-sector security standards and guidelines for the critical infrastructure. It also, it means the executive order stipulates specific time frame for action to be taken by various US agencies in pursuance of different aspects of EO. So that means under these orders, everybody has been given, all agencies have been given a definite time frame, and all agencies are expected to complete their responsibilities, complete their work which has been assigned to them in the given time frame. And finally it says it directs, the President of US directs the federal agencies, that means the central government agencies, to develop voluntary cyber security standards for critical parts of the private sector and to consider proposing new mandates where possible under existing law, noting that the standards need to be tailored for specific sectors in a partnership with stakeholders of those sectors. And this is very, very important when we talk about the standards, because unless we evolve standards, we will not be able to share information, we will not be able to make use of information in a very, very meaningful manner. On the other hand, when we start adhering to standards, we lose a little bit of creativity, we lose a little bit of our control. So we got to strike a balance. So I'll stop here, and I would only urge that let us sit together, let's try to create a legal framework, let's try to create an administrative framework, and thereafter we must create strategies which will be dynamic in nature, and we have to sit with academia, we have to sit with industry, we have to sit with private sector, and we have to sit with the civil society. I am extremely grateful to the state government of J&K and the organizer of this conference for having invited me over here. It gives me an opportunity to be a part, or not only a part of this conference, but also to visit this wonderful place, which is unparalleled anywhere in the world. Thank you very much.